And the Oscar goes to Dunkirk, Lee Smith.
I just want to say this is the most awesome thing that can happen to a guy like me.
Lee, how did you first get involved in film editing?
My father was an optical effects supervisor in Australia, and my father phoned all of the people that he was working with in a small post-production company. Said, yeah, we need a kid, basically. And I started work at this small company called Film Production Services in Australia. And guess who worked there as directors? Peter Weir, Philip Noyce, Jane Campion, Gillian Armstrong. So unwittingly, I'd landed in this amazing facility, and I kind of wanted to know how to do everything. And some of the other assistants weren't interested. They wanted to be film assistants, didn't want to know how to operate the projector. And then when the industry contracted again, guess who was kept on? Me. The lesson in that is you should be interested in all facets.
You never know what's going to pan out.
You never know. And then I became a sound editor and a sound designer. And
well, you designed the sound on Deadcom, which is sonically such an amazing film.
It was one of my favorite jobs. And I did sound for Jane Campion's Piano, and then I was working with Peter Weir as an assistant film editor, and I worked my way up through the ranks to be co-editor on The Truman Show, and then I cut Master and Commander and The Way Back.
And then how did you and Kiristofer Nolan first end up working together?
I just finished Master and Commander, and we were finished in LA, and I had an agent, and she rang up and said, you know, would I be interested in editing a Batman movie? To which I said no. And then she was saying that this director is a bit of a lot of buzz about him, and had I seen Memento? Of course I said no. Only person on the planet who hadn't seen Memento. So I went out and watched Memento, and then I rang her back and I said, yeah, I mean, clearly this guy really makes great films. And so sure. And I went over and had an interview, and which was fascinating because we didn't talk about Batman at all. It was just like we're doing, just chatting about films and experience and movies. And
well, I find that, you know, being in the editing room for so many hours with the director, you really have to feel comfortable with that person. It's more than just the technical, and you really have to see if you're in sync emotionally and whether, you know, you have a very similar sensibility.
I honestly can't imagine being in a room with someone for that many hours and that much work if you didn't have a synchronicity of ideas.
So I loved Interstellar. I just thought it was brilliant.
Oh, thank God. Can you imagine if you'd have said you hated it?
I know,
the interview's over.
So you shot on 70mm. Does that affect how you edit? Do you hold on shots longer?
No, because we did a very exhaustive process on The Dark Knight when we shot. A lot of The Dark Knight was shot in IMAX, 70mm, and I did cutting tests with the aspect ratios. And I remember the first time I did it, and I'm watching it on my monitor in the editing room, and I'm like, oh, this is shit, this isn't gonna work.
Because the frame was just so big. And
well, you got the frame, the 2:3:5 aspect ratio, and then popping out to IMAX and popping down again. And on a monitor, it does not work as an aspect ratio change. And I took it over to IMAX, and we projected it. And I was completely shocked. It was like, wow, you're not, because of the scope and the size of the image, you're no longer aware of the aspect ratio changing. And in the Avid, I've got a full frame 4:3 aspect ratio of everything shot in IMAX on one layer. Then we'll take a extraction, like I'll run a 2:3:5 mask over the top of it so we can look down from the top and we see the 2:3:5. And that was all worked out by my assistant editor, John Lee, who is a genius. And I've worked with him for about 17 years now.
Well, I find it so important to have an assistant who really knows that stuff because you really want to just focus on the emotion and the scenes and getting that. And if you're thinking too much about, you know, the technology and things like that.
I completely agree. And you, on these films, you know, you've got a big crew. We've got conforming crew, and we're transferring files backwards and forwards to the UK for the visual effects. The world of the assistant editor is so technical now. The knowledge that these guys have to have is, compared to what I used to have as a film assistant, there's no comparison. You really appreciate them. And as you say, I need to not worry about all that stuff because this is complicated enough.